Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From 168 with Hannah. If you are in the States, I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving. I did. I took the week off from poems, so I haven't seen all of you. What have you been reading? I read Alyssa Strauss's When You Care. And I was reading it when I loved it. So, Hannah, I accepted your invitation. I'll invite you too. Aha!
Hey,
Look, look, you did it perfectly. You get an A plus.
I'm so nervous already.
That's me putting it on your paper, A plus. So it makes people nervous, this thing.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm just doing is embracing the fact that I am an awkward person. We might see the mailman go by, the things that are beyond my control. I'm trying to let go.
Yep. I texted the plumber and said, I'm busy until 10:30. I can't answer the door. Can't do anything. So he'll probably show up during this. Even though I told him I
I
couldn't
love
answer the door. So
plumbers. If I ever do anything, I would become a plumber because I think it's the one job that AI is never going to be able to take over.
it's for sure. Yeah. It's good to have a trade, I think. Glazier, plumber, mason. Plus, it has cool names, I think, you know. Um, so, how are you today?
Pretty good. Actually, this is sort of magical. The sun is coming out for the first time in
Oh,
about 3 days. We're in Kentucky. It says it's 32, but it feels like 17, and we've had snow, and um, so yeah, it's I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I had a good Thanksgiving. It was kind of tense before. I had a very sick child, which is not good, but we went on our trip and it was beautiful. And we were in Hawaii, and it was lovely. So now we're back, and Kate says hi, Hannah. I don't know if you see that at the bottom,
Hey, hey, Kate. Warm-
but it's fun when people say hi. So hi, Kate. Um, yeah, so I'm happy to be here with you, and I really enjoyed your book, and I'm looking forward to your next one. And I know there's more to read, but my TBR list is so long. Do you feel the same way? There's so many great books to read, and it's daunting how
There's
many
so
great
much
books there are.
Float Test by Lynn Stever Strong, and I cannot wait to start that. But yeah, it's just so much. There's so much to read. There's so much old stuff to read.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
I plan to add to your, TBR pile.
yes, yes, you are. And Kimmy says hi. I think it's Kimmy.
Oh, hey, yeah, this current student.
That's lovely. I love teachers. I'm a big fan of teachers. You're a professor, which is fancier, but my kids are still in teacher land, and I love them, and I appreciate all of. I don't know. Teachers are magic, I
I
think, and I don't think they're going to be replaced by AI either, because nobody wants to learn from AI. It's so freaking boring.
I totally agree with that. And I will say, my stepdaughter's 13 and she's in eighth grade. And when I've sat in on her classes before, and what they're
Yeah.
doing in those classrooms is so much more impressive than what I.
The classroom management is very impressive. Like, because there are so many kids with so many different needs, and that they're really trying to engage with all of them. And yeah, my kids' high school teachers, I'm just they seem like they care so much, and that was not my experience. I had a couple teachers in high school who I felt cared. I felt like many of them were just trying to survive, which is fair, but it was like so many of them are really engaged, and I'm just grateful. So none of you are
Um,
watching, but I'm grateful.
I was pretty lucky. I went to a boarding school without really understanding what a boarding school was.
Mm.
I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia, and my sister sort of discovered boarding school as a way to get away from our parents' divorce. And England, I visited her once, and Hogwarts didn't exist yet because the book wasn't
Right.
around. Um, and I had that same sort of like
Mhm.
guttural, like it was just beautiful and insane. And so I went to boarding school too, and I was very lucky. Those teachers were they helped make me the writer and the teacher I am today. I was just, but I was also clueless about the world I was going into.
Well,
Utterly nice.
that's the balance, right? I think that's so difficult. I mean, as a parent, like you want to embrace and love them and hold them close, but you also know the world exists. So
But you all
there's a balance there.
go away.
My mom went to boarding school and she also was escaping. That's part of the reason I left. I think boarding school is wonderful for that. I think it can give a lot of kids a place to thrive when home is not that place. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, do you want to read your poem? Of course, you said you weren't a poet. I would say that this is 168. I would say I've heard that at least 68 times. Everyone wants me to know they're not a poet. I'm not a poet, but George L. Lyon would say we're all poets. And
Wait,
she's in there in Kentucky with you.
that's right. That's right. And when I read her poem and when I read your poem, um, they what I love about good writing is it's both absorbing, engrossing, and sometimes it makes it look easy and it makes you inspired to want to write. And then I sit down to write my poem, and you're so kind to give us non-poets these, fill in the blanks. And I sit down and I'm like, this is the hardest thing I will do all week. Um, I will read the hardest I did all week. um, okay. I am from notebooks, from legal pads and moleskin. I am from the attic, rugged out, shiplapped, and low. I am from red clay and blue crabs. I am from karaoke and cards and early morning risers, from blue sky and star. I'm from fabulists and neat freaks, from suck in your stomach and don't meddle in those drawers. I'm from heathens and horses, headaches and divorces. We navel gaze, we plan our deaths. We are loyal and cliquish and inclined towards excess. We love it and it kills us.
Yay! You did it!
I wrote a poem.
You did. And I thought it was it's tied into your coming book.
It did. Well, so the new book is called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. And
Mm-hmm.
that is this my father started saying it probably 30 years ago. And as best we can tell, it's a corruption of an expression that they have down in the Bahamas where he goes a lot. He spends a lot of his time fishing down there. And came back and he started saying one day, if you love it, let it kill you. And we were cracking up. We're like, we're pretty sure it's more like, if you love it, let it go, like set it free. But the thing is, we are all, everyone in my family is whatever we are passionate about, we are passionate to excess.
Mm-hmm.
And so we adopted that. And writing this poem, it felt like I couldn't not use that line in some way. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why the last line nods at it. It really wasn't meant to be promotion of the book.
To
I mean, in many
think like, wow, this is really like
the title of that book, it's very much like tongue in cheek it's like an inside joke to my
yeah.
family. But it turns out that a lot of people love the title. So I'm
It's
glad. Thank
very
you, Dan.
compelling. And I think that it does make you wonder, oh, okay, is this like about addiction or obsession or, because I'm related to many people who have been obsessed with things that have ultimately been their demise. So, um, I think it
Yeah,
speaks
mine is
to that.
a
Yeah. 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 I mean, and also you can have relationships that are not good for you and you love them and they might not kill you, but kill parts of you that you then have to go back and reclaim. Which I
great.
feel like, I'm doing plenty of in my adult life. So I think it speaks to, I don't know. I just feel like as I get older, I'm doing a lot of taking things back
Yeah.
that I either, let die or were killed or however you want to put it. And so I think it speaks to that in me.
I like that a lot. I certainly, as I've gotten older, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, but I also think it can be a gendered
Mm,
experience for a lot of lot of women that I just there's a lot of stuff that I never let myself do, and a lot of things I never let myself say. And the older I get, the more I understand that we have this one shot, and every single second counts, and why waste it with complacency or fear if you're in a place where you're able to not be fearful. So
Right.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to embrace it.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. Like if you are in a place, I mean, so oftentimes I let things go or because I didn't feel safe. And so I think, now I do. Thank you, life. And so I can like sit with those things and think about like, I mean, honestly, poetry was one of those things. As many of us, I think, wrote a lot of poetry when I was a teenage girl, and loved poetry and and was obsessed with Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. And I felt like, they saw me in a way that nobody else did. And then I went off to college and took a poetry class and was told, boo, not good. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not good. You know, this person I don't know thinks I'm bad at this and she must be right. So I'll do something else. Um, I think a lot of us do a lot of things like that. We give people authority over our lives. So this has been a really powerful thing for me to say to all kinds of people, you're a poet, and to say to myself, I'm a poet, and to just create the space, I guess, that I wanted,
Well, that's what,
like,
that's I love the way that you talk about that because certainly, I'm lucky. I have published books, and I meet people all the time who say, I like to write, but I'm not a writer. Like you
mm,
always say, if you write, you are a writer. It does not take a contract. It does not take a cover. If you write, you are a writer. Embrace it. Don't be embarrassed. Just own it.
I think it's so wonderful you say that. And it took me a long time, even though, I have an MFA. It's in film and television, but nevertheless, it's an MFA, and I wrote a lot, and I write a lot, but it took me so long to call myself that because there was always another goalpost, right? They're always moving the goalpost. Like, well, I mean, because there are people who publish books who still don't feel like writers. Like I've had people who've published books say to me, "Well, I'm not a writer like you," and I'm like, "What does that even mean?" I don't, you know, we're all like you say, if you're writing, you're a writer. And why are we telling ourselves we're not writers? Like that's so it just makes me sad. But I did it to myself for so long. So
Mhm.
I get it.
I've even gotten to this point where I will admit to my students all the time, if I'm playing with a title in my head, I count that as writing. So I try not to beat myself up
Yeah.
about, well, I down today. I didn't, get the legal pads out. I didn't type anything. And I'm just constantly trying to remind myself and remind students and other people who are also writing, if you're thinking about it, that's part of it. You can't just
I
walk
agree.
up to a paper and put a story down. And, I saw Ann Patchett speak last year, I think at the Mississippi Book Festival. And obviously everybody loved Ann Patchett, what's not to love. But she said and I'm sure she said this a million times, but I'd never heard her say this before. She comes up with entire novels before she ever sits down to write them. And that's a lot of writing that she's doing in her head. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to be able to point out to people who are interested in doing what we do, that there are a lot of different ways to do it.
I agree. I mean, I'm sure the same thing happens to you because I've seen in your Instagram stories that you run. I'm a walker and a hiker, and so much writing happens in that space. When I'm just figuring out the connections, like how it all makes sense together, like that's such a huge part of telling a story. You can't just list things, unfortunately. Unfortunately,
So,
there isn't a prompt for books. Fortunately, as I was writing my memoir, I was like, I need a prompt. But there isn't one. So, and Kara said in the comments, thank you so much for saying that, Hannah. She's written a book and she doesn't consider herself a writer. So, it's
you are.
just, I do also wonder if that's more of a gendered thing as well. I haven't um, talked to as many men here or in general about writing, partially because I just stopped caring what they thought, to be honest. Because I went when I was getting my MFA, it was there was like 50 of us in our cohort, and it was like 9 women, and I did so much trying to bend myself into something that they would find interesting. You know, I spent a lot of time, even though I was writing about women and always have written about women, I would try to make it something they would also like. And then I realized, like, oh, you're not my audience. And it took me a long time to get there. And so now I just kind of just don't give a shit. You know, it's like, well, um, like that's I don't know, but I do wonder if that's a gendered thing too. But
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think a lot of it is just having the courage to sit down and to think that your ideas are,
yeah, yeah,
worth saying out loud, much less worth writing down, right? And there is something permanent about putting something on the page that is kind of scary. And, I just, I've been writing my whole life, and I was a little weirdo, raised by weirdo, weirdo sibling. Um, and they were my brother and my sister, who I'm very close to. They're both older than I am, and I saw them as these incredibly popular people, and I worshipped them from afar. And they would bring me into their games mostly to torment me, which obviously, because when they tormented me, it meant that I was getting their attention. But most of the time, I was alone in my bedroom, and I did start off with poems. It's the way to start, right?
yes, absolutely.
Boy, I found one of those poems recently, seventh grade, and I had a lot of very superficial, deep,
Mm.
sad
Oh
thoughts.
yeah, yeah. Very mawkish, you know, my stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, because I did have all these big feelings. They were real and big, but I didn't know how to articulate them, you know. But you got to start somewhere.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reading memoirs, people will reference, like, I was reading my note. And Georgella, actually, in her office, has just notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of her journals. And she showed me all of her Where I'm From poem drafts, which was amazing. I mean, beautiful, amazing, great teaching tool. Um, and yeah, I don't have all that. And I barely wrote because my mom was I've said this many times, but she was like, don't write anything down you don't want everyone to read. That was her.
Oof.
Yeah. Because that was what she was told as a child. We're both from big families, where there was not a lot of boundaries. And so she was like, just know, like, someone's going to find it. And so I just didn't
That-
do it.
That's interesting because when I think back to really understanding that I enjoyed spending time alone and
Mm,
writing things down, never once thinking I could be a writer,
mm,
a quote unquote writer, just knowing
mm,
that I loved it and it passed the time, and it gave my imagination something to do. And my tendency to lie as a child, it gave those lies a place to go. But I always I've been thinking about this recently, how I flitted back and forth between like being this little 11-year-old performance artist, because anytime somebody would give me a journal, I would write in the journal and leave it open for anybody to read. Like,
mm, mhm.
read it. Nobody wanted to read it. My sister got me a locked diary, and I'd leave the key around. Nobody was um, but then on the other hand, I got so there's this performance artist aspect, but then on the other hand, I also thought I was invisible a lot of the time, and
Mm.
I'm sure my therapist could have a field deal with that one. But uh, I I would get postcards from friends that I met at camp, and I would put them on the refrigerator. And sometimes my mom would say, "Well, don't you think what so and so wrote you is a little advanced? She's kissing boys." And I was like, "Why did you read that? It's private. You put it on a magnet on the refrigerator. Like, why wouldn't I read it?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, why did I do it?" So because I thought I was invisible. I have no idea.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. I mean, I can listen to people talk about their childhoods forever. I find it endlessly fascinating. I'm not, I just, and I also think, I don't think it was you, it was someone else I was talking about with how whenever you read, oh, somebody wrote me, whenever you read someone's poem, some part of it like dings something almost every single time. No matter what the poem is, it reminds me of some memory. It makes me think of my childhood, not in a narcissistic way, in a like communal way of like how we all have these experiences and we all are tied to each other. And it just makes me feel like good, like the world is navigable.
I
So
completely
I,
agree.
it's like I hear you talk about, and I had a locked diary as well. And I was like, this isn't a good enough lock. Like somebody could definitely use a hammer to get into this. Like, come on. This is flimsy. So, I don't know what I would have written, like that I thought was so I just ended up writing like, I love Brandon 100 times because everyone knew I loved Brandon. That wasn't any secret. But, so I just wrote things that everyone knew that were very basic.
I have
Um,
a lot of encounters with ghosts that did not happen. And this is why it was so disappointing. There was a lot of help. I've just seen a ghost. I was desperate, some sort of intrigue or haunting in my childhood. And for somebody to, you know, oh my gosh, we need to help this girl who's encountering and talking to ghosts, but nobody, everyone gave me my privacy when I didn't want it.
Did you like, did, so something I think I liked, not like I sought it out, but was like when I would get physical injuries because I felt like it was something I could point at, like, see, this hurts. I need help with this. And scars are very visible and it fed into my whole like toughness. And um, that was something I could cry about and it made sense. Did you have any relationship to being hurt? That was something I've thought about a lot more recently.
I taught myself from a very young age. So when I say that my brother and my sister beat me up, I mean that in like the sort of in the loving way. I was
Yeah.
often just their plaything. I was basically like a plaything. And I taught myself at an early age to laugh when something hurt. So my brother would give me a rug burn. And at first I cried, but by the time I was 7 or 8, I would just giggle like it's the craziest thing. And sometimes still when I hurt myself, I giggle. And a lot of people, well, it can be pretty strange to witness, is what I've been told. But if you teach yourself at a pretty early age, it's like you're reconditioning your natural instincts. But because we were so physical, I mean, we lived on a farm. We were
Mm-hmm.
constantly running up and down and just throwing ourselves into as many dangerous positions and situations as we could because that's where adventure was.
Mm-hmm.
But I did realize I sort of craved it, but I also managed to redirect it. So I think it made it less fun for them. But then, of course, that meant I wasn't getting their attention. So there was the human heart in conflict with itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a lot of that in childhood, right? Because I mean, in life in general, but in childhood, you have like no tools or power. So it's much more difficult. But that's interesting about laughing when you got hurt. I don't, I don't think I laughed, but I definitely didn't want to show that it hurt. I'm the youngest of five, and I have four older brothers. So it was like, um, I didn't ever want to be weak. That was
Same.
uh, bad. Um, So I've noticed, like, I think I isolate. That's something I've had to, like, when I hurt, it's like, don't touch me. Don't look at me, don't touch me. That's when I really wanted to be invisible. I know that sort of stands in contrast to me saying I like getting hurt, but I liked it after, like when you have the hurt, not when you're in crisis. When you're in
You're in control.
crisis, it's like, no.
But
Yeah.
once it's a scar or once it's just blood and it no longer hurts, then you're in control of it and you can be like,
Yeah.
look at that. But
Yeah. See how tough I am?
I'm the same way now about when I get hurt, I need to be alone. I don't want anybody's sympathy. If somebody tries to help me, this rage builds up in me.
That's how I was
I
too.
mean, and I'm also very clumsy. So I hurt my all the time in the house, and my boy was like, and we're walking out of the room. You have
Oh
the
yeah.
room.
No, the
With,
rage. Sorry, I'm laughing so hard I'm crying. Like, yeah, don't try to touch me. What are you doing? Yeah. It was, well, childbirth was an interesting conundrum. It's like, people have to touch you. Um, and you can't just swallow it. So that was tricky.
oof.
But yeah, accepting comfort is something that I've gotten better at. But yeah, I used to be absolute garbage at it. Like I I think I actually sort of felt like you're trying to give me comfort, and it's a trick. Like, you're going to comfort me, but this is going to bite me in the ass. So just don't even try it. It just felt like a ploy, which is sad, but I
It
think that's how it felt.
it took me like 35 years before I understood that bragging about having a high tolerance for pain was like a healthy thing. And my therapist did help me understand that. And at the same time, I was like, yeah, but I do. But
Oh,
it's
God.
it's cool.
Same.
But I just want you to know that I have a really high tolerance for pain. And my therapist was not winning anything. And I'm like, but if there were a competition, I think I'd be there.
Oh, God. I same. And I mean, I actually say in the memoir, like, that was something that my family said, oh, she's good with pain. Like, that was something that was said about me. And I was very proud of it. Yeah, not good.
I
Like,
know.
that's not, but I
Not,
really felt like it was something I needed to cultivate, like, that it was essential
yeah,
for me
like
to be good at
power.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't hurt me. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny about that, about yeah, yeah, having a high pain tolerance. I say that's such a funny, I don't know how many people feel that way, but you and I do. And
At least one other person. My mom is like this too. And she lives just down the street and we're very close to her. She comes over all the time. And sometimes she just recently had knee replacement surgery. And,
Mhm.
she's beaming about how she's tolerating the pain. And my boyfriend, he's looking at me, he's looking at my mom, and he's like, "This is what I'm going to be dealing with. This over here." And she's like, "I don't need any help. I'm going to go up all the stairs." And today I brought up the vacuum, and I'm like, "You literally had the surgery yesterday. Don't touch the vacuum." And it's just like you see this look of fear on his face, and I'm like, "Good for you with the vacuum."
There's a lot to untangle there. But I do feel like we're making progress. That we even know that it's not the greatest thing ever.
All we're using it for right now is to make connections. We're making a connection.
That's right. That's right. Um, well, anything else before we close, Hannah? This has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me and doing the hardest thing of your week with me.
Which was also the best thing. I can.
Oh.
This is rose on my thorn. It was really. It's good to be.
Oh, your rose and your thorn. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I do not take, and I know that you feel the same way. I don't take a single reader or listener for granted. So every opportunity like this is just thank you so much.
Oh, I love that about you, and I've really appreciated connecting with so many people this way because writing is hard, and even if you love it, it's hard and it's lonely, and but ultimately, like you hope you'll connect with people because of it. Like, you hope you'll become not invisible because of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. So you did it for me. You
Thank you.
became visible. So um, I look forward to your book. When is it coming out? You told me, but I forgot.
July 2025, and I will get a galley in the mail to you just to make that list. Like that's.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Okay, well, I look forward to it. Thank you again, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.
Okay, bye, Hannah. Thank
Bye.
you, you too. Bye.